rundown of the plot of Avatar. Jake and Neytiri are a happy family. Jake got his happily ever after. They end up having 4 kids. The oldest, Neteyam, the biggest brother, the younger, Loak, their adopted daughter, who is basically a clone of Grace from the last movie. Apparently Grace's avatar got knocked up, the human, the avatar, and so So that's their adopted daughter, Kitty, and the youngest baby, a little girl called Took. Then there's this human child named Spider, who's an orphan, and he couldn't get deported back to Earth because he was too young to go into a cryosleep chamber. So having no parents, and despite the efforts of the scientists and the other humans trying to raise him, he chose to spend more time with the Na'vi children. And so he basically grew up with Jake's family, even though Neytiri doesn't like him because she's racist against humans. Honestly, I can understand why after the first movie. Jake teaches his oldest son and thus his youngest children as they grow older. He can now completely speak the language and basically sounds like English to him now because he's fluent in it. He still finds the time to hang out with his wife Neytiri. They all go flying together. It's really fun. But then something happens. One night after they're all asleep, they see some really bright stars in the sky. Jake notices that their ship's decelerating. The humans are back and they've come back in droves. As a result of them landing the rockets on the moon Pandora, where the Na'vi live, they end up burning the entire forest beneath them. Not like they're gonna need this world or anything for the humans. They're coming because they've destroyed their world. Not like they don't need any of the resources, like the trees and whatnot. Anyway, Neytiri's really sad about this and she cries. Jake, being the leader of his people now, he leads insurgencies and stops a supply train going to a huge city that the humans have basically built on the planet very quickly. Technological advancement is just through the roof. Amazing what these humans can do when there's motivation to want to survive. The villain from the last movie, Quaritch, of course, he was dead, but now he's alive again because they apparently were growing avatars for all the soldiers and his entire squad is brought back, but now they're in avatar bodies that just happen to have the exact same hairstyles they had when they died and their tattoos as well. I like to think probably somebody stenciled the tattoos on them while they were growing or something so they could feel like they have a sense of identity and cut their hair the way they saw them. They must be paying someone a lot of money to have that much attention to detail. Anyway, Quaritch has all the memories that his human body had. Not exactly him because he's dead, but all of his memories and experiences, except for when he died, are there. So therein lies the old existential question, are you your memories when you're in a different body? I don't know, not going down that path. Jake Sully definitely settles into his father role. His 2 older children, the 2 boys, eldest Neteyam, the one that looks a lot like Jake himself, Loak, get into trouble because they were supposed to be lookouts, while Jake and the rest of the people, as well as Neytiri, were raiding the supply chain for all the machinery and guns and whatnot. They almost got killed in the process because they did not follow orders. Neytiri tells Jake he's being too hard on them, and this isn't a squad, it's a family. Jake lets down his guard with her and reveals that he was actually really scared that he lost the boys today. Then we get to know a little bit more about Kitty, who's basically a clone of Grace. Nobody knows who her father is, but her brother and Spider dig around and say it's probably Norm since he spent the most time with Grace. Grace's avatar thing is still in the machine. It's still alive, sort of. Had to have been to give birth to her. And she talks to it even though it can't talk back to her. I wonder if they're gonna bring Grace back from AWOL later on to put in that body. Who knows? There's definitely something different about Kitty. And when they leave the lab later to go somewhere where they're obviously not supposed to go, she's communing with nature, and nature seems to be affected by her directly. The way that Eywa affected nature by telling the animals what to do in the first movie. They go and see Quaritch at the site of his death. Quaritch sees Neytiri's signature arrows, and a wave of fear crosses his face. Loak and Kitty here tell their father what's going on, even though they know their father's gonna be mad at them for being there. Quaritch is looking for Jake Sully. And get this, the reason why they even had Quaritch and the other squadron go into Na'vi bodies is because when they did try to get close to what they think was Jake's base of operations in the Hallelujah Mountains, the fauna and the rest of the animals around would attack them. And they figured if they're in Na'vi bodies, they'll seem like part of the ecosystem, and so the other animals won't attack. Even though that's literally what happened in the first movie to Jake, regardless of him being a Na'vi body or not. So when Quaritch and his men and women are walking through the forest, and one of those pup things with hands come up, it growls at them, and then it's like, oh, you're Na'vi people wearing guns and suits and whatnot. I guess I'm just gonna go on my way. See you later. It is possible though now, because Jake has taught the people how to use military equipment, which is very smart, that the wildlife around them might have gotten used to seeing that, and so it's kind of hard for them to tell. Anyway, Jake's kids and Spider are caught. They all tell Spider to calm down, and Quaritch seems to recognize Spider and calls him Miles, to which Spider responds that nobody's called him that anymore. And this is probably where Spider recognizes this is his father. Kids are captured. His mother was passed to court, and apparently it's a graphic novel about it, so you can continue there. Anyway, Anyways, after the kids are caught, they through the little Bluetooth thing had let their parents know where they were. Jake and Neytiri save them. Spider falls, still having his hands tied, off a tree, and of course, General Miles Quaritch takes the boy, who was tortured by his new general while she was trying to get information from him about where Jake is. But this guy knows how to close his mind off and not give any information. Feeling the biological instinct to protect his own blood, Quaritch stops the torture and offers to be more personable with Miles, trying to bond with him in the process. Jake, Neytiri, and the kids end up leaving the Metkayina people because Quaritch had their kids under the knife. They could have been killed, and he's not going to stop hunting them. This puts the Metkayina people in danger. So to save the Metkayina people and to protect his family, he goes across the sea far away to the reef people, Na'vi that have evolved to have much larger chest barrels so their lungs can be bigger and hold more air, fins on their arms, and flute tails, as well as webbed fingers and toes. They are perfectly adapted to life in the water. Just like the first movie, Jake and his kids and Neytiri are forced to learn their ways, which involves riding the elu and other creatures and learning to hold their breath longer. But most of what is focused on are the kids, especially Grace's child, Kitty. Kitty has a special appreciation of nature, and she fits right in because she can already hold her breath very long, keep calm, and she seems to commune directly with nature. Lowak, Jake's second child and second son, ends up liking the chief's daughter. Later, because Kitty is being picked on, Lowak and his bigger brother get into a fight with the chief's son, and they're forced to make peace. The chief's son, whose name I don't really know, says sure, we can be friends, and they basically lead Lowak out of the reef, which is not allowed, pretending that they're going hunted, but then they leave him stranded. He gets attacked by this basically underwater Thanador, but he is saved by this big whale creature called a Tulkun. This specific one is an outcast to his family, and he's missing a fin. And it's discovered later that the reason he's outcasted is because his whole family was killed while he watched, and he survived. And he took vengeance by using some of the people and other Tulkun to fight against the humans. But his vengeance blinded him, and everyone was endangered, at least as far as I understand. Paikon, this specific Tulkun, who's a very intelligent animal, brings Loak back to the reef. When they find out that he's been bonded with Paikon, everyone is really upset, saying that he's a killer. But of course, Lowak feels outcasted by his own family because he's always messing up. So he and Paikon share a very special relationship. Even the chief's daughter tries to stick up for him, but nobody will listen. Lowak had also helped Paikon by taking out an anchor that some whalers had shot inside his other fin. After Paikon brings him back, Lowak takes up for the chief's son, even though the chief's son's the one who left him there. Later, when they plug into the spirit tree, Kitty has a seizure underwater after she speaks to her mother Grace and asks who her father is. Of course, she doesn't get an answer. The Ocean Mother Woman uses some acupuncture ritual thing and is able to bring Kitty back from out of consciousness. Before then, Jake had called for some of the scientist guys to come to the reef and try to help his daughter. They took scans and everything seemed fine, but says if she seizes underwater again, it could kill her. A bunch of these whale creatures called the Tulkun, like Paikon, come back. They're so intelligent, they're said to even be smarter than humans and many animals because they have more neural pathways. Metkayina are talking with these Tulkun things and showing them their babies, and they're exchanging stories and basically catching up. They're spirit siblings. But the fun does not last for long, because now that the Tulkun are back, Colonel Quaritch uses this opportunity to try and kill one of them or work with the whaling people who hunt them for a special thing near their brain. It's a fluid that actually stops aging of human beings. This is even more valuable than unobtainium, since they have a whole bunch of that anyway. Meanwhile, Spider is seeing everything that they're doing, and he is not liking any of it, but he feels conflicted because he's getting to know his father. Tulkun and her baby are mercilessly killed in cold blood, and this draws out the Metkayina people and Jake and his family. Not to mention, Quaritch also threatened to kill some of the village members of other tribes of the reef that he thought were harboring Jake and his family. But because his son begged him, he chose not to and burned all their houses instead, after they shot one of their elu. Jake tells the Metkayina people to tell the Tulkun to run away to save them. All the water people want to fight, but Jake's like, that's not a good idea. You guys have no idea what the hell you're talking about. So while they all go to warn their Tulkun, nobody's out there to warn Paikon, Lowak's friend, the outcast Tulkun. So he goes to save him and warn him about what's happening because nobody else will, since the whole tribe hates him and thinks he's a killer, which is basically not really the truth, he's just misunderstood. But something's wrong. Paikon is freaking out and tells him in his language and by showing him that one of those beacon harpoons are stuck to him and he can't get it out. Once that's marked, these whalers can easily find the Tulkuns even if they dive and fire depth charges to deafen them, forcing them to the surface so they can shoot these big balloon things that keep them on the surface before they kill them. But Lowak is not as alone as he thought. His big brother brother and all their friends from the Reef Tribe come to help. They also call Jake on their Bluetooth thing to come and help. All the parents are on their way, and so are the whaling ships, which have Corage and his squad on them. And he recognizes through his binoculars that Jake's kid and his other siblings are on top of this alien whale creature trying to save it. The warship comes, and Jake comes with his flying fish and all the Mech Hyena people and gives himself up, knowing that's why Corage has his kids in the first place. As soon as he boards the boat, or the carrier, he's going to be shot. That's all Corage wants. Payakan, seeing that his friend Lowak has a gun to his head on the ship, being part of a species that people claim are completely gentle and benevolent and would never harm anyone, Payakan's not about that life. He jumps up and gives everybody the surprise of their lives and attacks everyone on the boat, but makes sure that he does not hurt his friend. As Payakan does this, it gives Jake the angle he needs to start the war to get his children. Jake and the Mech Hyena attack, and Payakan gets revenge on the whaler that killed his family. Kiri puts her copulation thing inside one of the sea anemones, and with her hand and some movements, like she's a freaking avatar, well, you know what I mean, she's able to control them. She has a freaking superpower now. Now the guys that were calling Kiri a freak all of a sudden have a newfound respect for her. Spider, the human boy, the son of Quaritch, attacks the people on the vessel as well, or at least attacks their equipment so they lose control of it. Netayam, the older brother, through the fray, goes to save Lowak, Took, Lowak's girlfriend, the chief's daughter. But as he's helping to get them to safety, he is shot. Netayam unfortunately dies. Neytiri is beside herself. Jake tells her that we need to be strong, because Quaritch managed to get the two daughters. So Neytiri, feeling all the rage and vengeance of a mad mother insane, works with Jake to get her children back. Neytiri grabs Spider while Quaritch has Kiri up against it with a knife to her throat. Jake sullies what he really wants, even though he had lots of time to make his point by at least killing one of the kids. But I now believe that Quaritch is probably not that bad of a person. I think that up close and personal, he does not want to kill little children. Because I mean, when it made sense for that to happen, he just did not take that opportunity. He must feel differently now that he's father. Neytiri threatens to kill Spider, and Quaritch calls her on her bluff. But when she raises the knife and is like, alright bitch, whatever, I don't care about this human, I don't like them anyway, Quaritch quickly screams out no and drops the knife and lets Kiri go. Because he actually does love his son and doesn't want his only known heir to die. The family gets away, but he taunts Jake, understandably embarrassed at his show of weakness. Spider is able to get away, and the others, but he tells Jake that I'm still out here. If you leave now, you know I'm still out here, right? You really want to leave me out here where I can, come back and kill your whole family? And it works. He taunts Jake into fighting him, and Jake ends up killing him by drowning him to death. Because, he's had practice living with the Mech Hyena people and holding his breath. Unfortunately, the big old ship Payakan ended up overturning is now sinking and flooding with water. Took the little girl, Jake and Neytiri's youngest, gets swept down in one of the little whirlholes going into the ship. Neytiri goes in after her, and when they're just about to drown because there's no more air pockets, Kiri uses her special powers and calls in a bunch of light fish to lead their way back out the ship. And she puts one of those jellyfish things that the Mech Hyena people told them would help them hold their breath longer on her mom's back, and they're led to safety. Jake, on the other hand, even though he's killed Quaritch, he can't find his way out the ship, and he ends up almost drowning too. Lowak, his last remaining son, finds him and encourages him, even though Jake tells Lowak that he must leave and save himself. Lowak loves his father, and Jake, being inspired by the strength in his son that he always doubted, follows him. When Jake is about to lose air though, Payakan comes out from nowhere and helps them the rest of the way towards the surface. Spider sees his father Quaritch drowned at the bottom inside the ship, and even though he is angry at his father and what he's done, he's still his father. And using his blow-up air thing, he ascends with his father in tow. Wearing a mask helps him breathe underwater. Spider saves Quaritch, and when Quaritch comes to, seeing Spider there and knowing his son had saved him, he asks his son to come with him and holds out his hand. But Spider does not have that kind of relationship with his father. He hisses at him the way the Na'vi do and dives back into the water. Quaritch sadly calls after his son for him to come back, but Spider sticks with the Na'vi people. After all, he considers them to be one of his own. Feeling defeated but needing to heal his wounds, Quaritch gets on his Banshee and flies back to wherever it is their base is. There's a funeral for Netayam, and Spider is adopted into Jake's and Neytiri's family, even though Neytiri almost killed him. They take Netayam's body and put him at the bottom in this field of sea anemone things that end up eating him, so his energy goes back to the world, and is one with Eywa. While connected to Eywa under the water, Neytiri and Jake both revisit a memory they had with their son when he was a young child. At least that way, Neytiri gets to see her son again. Jake understands that all of this happened because he came here, and he tells tells the chief, I understand if you want us to leave. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna take my family and try to go somewhere else. But the chief and his wife tell him no, he should stay. He is one of their people now. And so Jake says this is the next chapter in their story. They're water people now, and they're gonna be ready for the humans and whatnot. The end. That's basically the plot for Avatar. Of course, you'd have to see it yourself. The visuals are amazing. The characters are amazing. Of course, this movie, like many other movies, has its own share of issues. But dare I say it, especially when it came to the characters, a lot more depth and a lot more character building and world building in this movie. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.